The first time it happened, it felt like fire rushing through my veins. I remember my body pressed against his in the dim corner of that gym parking lot, the cool night air brushing against my flushed skin as his lips found mine with a hunger I had not felt in years. My wedding ring was still on my finger, gleaming under the streetlight, a reminder of the vow I was breaking with every breathless kiss. I should have pulled away. I should have remembered my husband waiting at home, the man who tucked our children into bed with patience and love. But in that moment, I did not care. I only cared about the way this man made me feel, desired, alive, reckless. When his hands slid across my body, I knew I had stepped into something I could never undo. Before I take you deeper into my story, let me pause for a moment. To all my loyal subscribers, thank you so much for continuing to support this channel. Your encouragement is the very reason I keep telling these stories with honesty and passion. And to all the new viewers who just stumbled across my video, welcome. I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button, because it truly serves as the fuel and energy that powers this channel. Also, do not forget to share your thoughts in the comments right after this short hook. I love hearing your opinions and your perspectives. Now, let us return to the story. My name is Sarah, and I am a 34-year-old woman living in the suburbs of Ohio. On the surface, my life was as perfect as the glossy pages of a lifestyle magazine. I had a devoted husband, David, who worked hard to provide for our family. We owned a modest but beautiful home in a quiet neighborhood where children rode bicycles on weekends and neighbors waved as they mowed their lawns. Together, David and I had 2 children, a boy and a girl, who were the very center of our world. To everyone around me, I was a woman who had everything: stability, comfort, and love. But deep inside, I felt something was missing. David was steady, loyal, and kind, but somewhere along the way, our marriage became routine. Our conversations revolved around bills, groceries, and school schedules. Nights ended with him falling asleep on the couch after a long day at work, while I scrolled endlessly on my phone, restless and unsatisfied. I began to crave something more, something exciting, something that would make me feel like I was more than just a wife and mother. That was when I met him. His name was Jason. He was a trainer at the local gym where I had recently started working out. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a confidence that filled the room the moment he walked in, Jason had a way of making every woman feel seen. At first, it was harmless. A smile here, a light joke there, small talk about workout routines and protein shakes. But soon, his compliments lingered. He would glance at me in a way that sent shivers racing down my spine. He noticed the little things. My new sneakers, the way I tied my hair, even the nervous laugh I gave when I struggled with a machine. For the first time in years, I felt like a woman again, not just a role someone expected me to play. The flirting escalated quickly. He would brush past me, his arm grazing mine, and I would feel a spark that left me thinking about him long after I left the gym. There were times I would catch him watching me from across the room, and my heart would race with a mix of fear and thrill. I told myself it was innocent, that I was imagining things. But deep down, I knew I was dancing on the edge of a dangerous cliff. One evening, after a particularly long workout, Jason offered to walk me to my car. I should have said no. I should have remembered David's smile, the warmth of my children's hugs. But I agreed. As we reached my car, there was a silence heavy with everything we had left unsaid. Then, without warning, he leaned in, and our lips collided in a kiss that shattered every barrier I thought I had. It was not gentle. It was desperate, hungry, and reckless. My body betrayed me as I kissed him back, clutching his shirt as if I needed him to breathe. My mind screamed at me to stop, but my heart and my body begged for more. The kiss deepened, and before I knew it, his hands were on my waist, pulling me closer, making me forget that I belonged to someone else. When it finally ended, I stumbled back, gasping, my entire body trembling. Jason's eyes searched mine, and there was no apology in them, only desire. He whispered, "I have wanted that since the first day I saw you." I should have run. I should have walked away and never looked back. But instead, I nodded, unable to speak, because the truth was, I had wanted it too. That night, lying in bed next to David, I stared at the ceiling while he slept peacefully beside me. His arm was draped across my waist, but all I could think about was Jason, his lips, his hands, the way he made me feel alive. My body ached with guilt, but the stronger ache was the craving for more. I had opened a door that could never be closed again. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself replaying that kiss over and over in my mind. Every time David kissed me, I thought of Jason. Every time I tucked my children into bed, I wondered what it would feel like to have Jason's arms around me instead. I was drowning in obsession, torn between the life I had built and the dangerous fantasy that consumed me. What started as one forbidden kiss quickly grew into something I could not control. I began to plan my gym sessions around Jason's schedule. I found excuses to stay longer, hoping for stolen moments with him. The guilt was there, gnawing at me, but it was not enough to stop me. The thrill of desire had hooked me, and there was no turning back. The first night it went further than a kiss, I did not resist. And from that moment on, everything changed. That was how it began. The fire, the obsession, the betrayal that would shatter everything I once held dear. After that night when Jason and I crossed the line, I realized that I had created a new version of myself. I was no longer just Sarah, the wife, the mother, the dependable neighbor. I had become a woman living two lives. On one hand, I was the perfect picture of a suburban wife, cooking dinners, attending school functions, and smiling for family photos. On the other, I was sneaking glances at my phone, waiting for Jason's messages, and rearranging my schedule so I could slip away into his arms. The affair began with stolen kisses in hidden corners, hurried touches in the shadows of the gym, and whispered words that left me trembling. But soon, it escalated. We started meeting outside of the gym, at a quiet motel on the outskirts of town where nobody would recognize us. The first time I walked into that room with him, my heart was pounding so loud I thought it might burst. My hands shook as he locked the door, and when he turned to face me, I felt a mixture of terror and anticipation. Jason kissed me with the same hunger as before, but now there was no one to stop us. No passing cars, no gym members, no threat of being seen. Just us. His hands explored me, his voice low and commanding, making me feel like I was wanted in ways I had never been wanted before. I knew it was wrong. I knew I was betraying David with every sigh and every touch, but in those moments, I could not think of anything except how alive I felt. I told myself it would be just once, maybe twice. But that was a lie I fed myself to keep the guilt from swallowing me whole. The truth was, the more time I spent with Jason, the more I craved him. I started lying with ease, telling David I was running errands or staying late at the gym. Each lie rolled off my tongue more smoothly than the last, and that frightened me. Because every lie I told pushed me deeper into a world I could not escape. At home, I tried to act normal. I kissed David goodnight, I packed lunches for our children, I smiled at our neighbors during afternoon walks. But inside, I was torn apart. David's touch, once enough to comfort me, now felt foreign. His routine kisses seemed lifeless compared to the fire Jason ignited in me. And every time David looked at me with trust and love in his eyes, I felt a pang of guilt so sharp it nearly broke me. But guilt was not enough to stop me. The danger of it all added fuel to the fire. Every time Jason and I met, I felt the thrill of doing something forbidden. The secrecy wrapped around us like a cloak, binding us tighter. He would text me late at night, short and direct, "I need to see you." And no matter how tired I was, no matter what was happening at home, I always found a way to make it happen. One afternoon, we met in his car instead of the motel. It was raining heavily, droplets sliding down the windows, blurring the outside world. Inside, the air was thick with heat and desire. My body was pressed against his, and I remember thinking how insane it was that I was risking everything for this man. But then his lips touched my skin, and I stopped thinking altogether. The danger grew even closer when we nearly got caught. It happened on a Sunday morning. David had taken the kids to visit his parents, and I told him I was staying home to clean and rest. Instead, Jason came over. We were in my living room, tangled together, when suddenly I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. My blood ran cold. Jason and I froze, our eyes wide in panic. David was not supposed to be back yet. I scrambled to my feet, my heart racing, pulling on my clothes with trembling hands. Jason grabbed his things and slipped out the back door just as David walked in through the front. I stood there, still flushed and shaken, trying to steady my breathing as David dropped his keys on the counter. He looked at me with his usual warmth, completely unaware of what had nearly happened. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice calm. I forced a smile, nodding quickly. "Yes, everything is fine. I was just cleaning." He kissed my forehead and went upstairs to grab something, never once suspecting that another man had just been in his house. The moment he disappeared, I collapsed onto the couch, my hands covering my face, the reality of what I was doing hitting me like a wave. I had almost been caught, and if I had, everything would have crumbled right then and there. But even that close call was not enough to stop me. Jason had a way of pulling me back every time I thought about walking away. He was bold, reckless, and full of confidence. He knew how to make me feel seen in ways David never did anymore. With Jason, I was not just a mother, not just a wife. I was desired. I was thrilling. I was alive. And yet, deep down, I knew it could not last. The lies were piling up. The guilt was becoming unbearable. The risk of being caught grew higher every day. But the worst part was not the fear of being discovered, it was the way Jason consumed my mind, even when I was with David. I would lie in bed beside my husband, his arm wrapped around me, and all I could think about was Jason's touch. I had fallen into a trap of my own making, and I did not know how to climb out. The double life I was living was tearing me apart, but I could not stop. And eventually, that weakness, that hunger, would cost me everything. The walls of deceit I had built around myself began to crumble faster than I could repair them. I had convinced myself that I was careful, that my lies were believable, that David would never suspect me. But the truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface, and when it did, it destroyed everything. It started with a message. One night, after Jason and I had spent hours together in that same rundown motel on the edge of town, I returned home exhausted. My hair was messy, my clothes smelled faintly of him, and though I tried to mask it with perfume, I felt like my guilt was painted across my skin. David was sitting at the dining table, his laptop open, but his eyes were fixed on me in a way that made my stomach twist. "You are home late," he said softly, but there was an edge in his voice. I forced a smile, dropping my gym bag by the door. "Yes, I stayed longer tonight. I wanted to push myself harder." David nodded, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he closed his laptop. "So tell me, who is Jason?" My blood froze. My throat went dry. My heart hammered in my chest as his words echoed in the silence. What do you mean?" I stammered, but the look in his eyes told me everything. He knew. David reached into his pocket and slid his phone across the table. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The screen glowed with the evidence of my betrayal. Messages. Dozens of them. My words, Jason's words, our secret rendezvous exposed in black and white. My lies, my lust, my obsession, all there for David to read. "I found your old phone in the drawer," David said quietly. "You forgot to sign out of your account." I did not go looking for this, Sarah, but once I saw his name, I could not stop reading. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. Tears filled my eyes as I tried to find the right words, but there were none. I reached for him, but he pulled away, his face etched with pain and fury. "How long?" he demanded, his voice trembling. "David, please." "How long?" he roared, slamming his fist against the table, making me flinch. My lips quivered as the truth slipped out. Months. The silence that followed was worse than any shouting could have been. He stared at me, his jaw clenched, his hands gripping the edge of the table as if he needed something to keep him grounded. His eyes, the same eyes that once looked at me with love and tenderness, now burned with betrayal. You brought him into our lives, he whispered. Into this house. Around our children. How could you? I collapsed to the floor, sobbing, begging, clinging to his legs like a desperate child. I am sorry. I do not know what came over me. Please, David, please. Do not leave me. I can fix this. I will end it. I will do anything. But David shook his head, his tears finally spilling over. You ended this the moment you chose him. Do you understand? You ended us. He walked past me, his footsteps heavy as he climbed the stairs. Minutes later, I heard drawers opening, the sound of him packing. My cries echoed through the house as I followed him, begging him to listen, to forgive. But he was unmoved. When he finally turned to face me, his suitcase in hand, his voice was cold and final. Get out. The words sliced through me like a blade. David, please. Get out of this house. This is no longer your home. And with that, he opened the door, his eyes filled with both rage and heartbreak. I had no choice but to leave. The night air was icy as I stumbled down the front steps, my body shaking with sobs. I sat in my car, staring at the house where I had built my life, the house where my children slept peacefully, unaware of the storm that had torn their family apart. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel, gasping for breath as the weight of my choices crushed me. Jason was the reason I had been thrown out, and yet, as I sat there, I realized he was not a safe place to land. He was never going to be the man who picked up the pieces of my broken family. He was a thrill, a flame that burned bright but left nothing but ashes behind. I had destroyed my marriage, my children's home, and my husband's trust, all for a man who was not mine to begin with. The next days blurred together in a haze of shame and regret. David did not answer my calls. My children stayed with him, their innocent faces haunting me every time I closed my eyes. I stayed in a cheap motel, the same kind I had once used to betray my vows, but this time it was not thrilling. It was suffocating. I thought about the nights I spent lying in bed with David, dreaming of Jason's touch. Now, Jason was all I had, and suddenly, he did not seem like enough. When I reached out to him, he grew distant, his messages shorter, colder. He had gotten what he wanted. And now, I was left with nothing. The irony was cruel. I had traded a lifetime of love for fleeting passion, and in the end, I lost both. One evening, as I sat alone in that motel room, staring at my reflection in the cracked mirror, I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. Her eyes were hollow, her face drawn with sorrow, her body trembling from the weight of her mistakes. I whispered to myself, I cheated once, and now I cannot stop thinking about him. But it cost me everything. The truth was undeniable. I had destroyed the man who loved me, the home that sheltered me, and the family that defined me. And forgiveness was never coming.